And that's where treatment should start in an early age. And it's even getting earlier now than adolescents. We got some 10, 11-year-olds who have actually touched their siblings. So we can kind of deal with it there. We get a better hold on it.
Very good. Ms. Cannon.
The common denominator, I think, for perpetrators of domestic violence is, again, a power and control issue. That they're violent toward their partner because it does enable them to gain power and control over her. It doesn't create a loving relationship or one based on trust, but it does allow him to have control of her. And then other forms of controlling behaviors can be used to maintain the power and control once it's obtained by means of the violence, such things as emotional abuse, economic abuse, isolation, keeping her away from friends and family, using the children, saying bad things about her to the children. Male privilege, that whole notion that just because I'm the man in this house, I'm king of the castle, and whatever I say goes, I rule the roost here. Those sorts of things can be used, and they always point to the fact that the violence can happen again. All of those nonviolent things that I mentioned may occur in homes where there's not been any violence, but once that violence has happened, then those abuses always point to the fact that violence could occur again, and hence there's that much more strength in that form of abuse.
So once it happens, there's a strong possibility that it will happen again.
Yes.
And those persons who are subject to that kind of violence the first time ought to react at that particular time.
Yes.
But now, why is it that in some instances people don't react to that kind of violence? I mean, what is the pattern there?
That's a very interesting issue, because we know that 80% of the men that we work with, and statistically around the country, grew up in homes where either they were abused as children or they saw their mother being abused. So there are some that grow up in that environment that make a choice somehow, that they choose not to use violence in dealing with the stresses and situations of their adult life. And that's it's one of, I think, one of the things about humans. There's a certain mystery about the choices that we make and why we make them. Perhaps there was somewhere along the line a good role model, someone that did provide them some sense of what a true relationship is that's not based on power and control. Another thing that feeds into this problem, it's not a cause, but it is something that exacerbates the problem of domestic violence, is substance abuse. And again, it's not a cause, but it's one thing that can really accelerate this problem.
Well, do you find substance abuse having anything to do with child sexual abuse, Ms. Butler?
We have people using that from time to time as an excuse, but as a treatment professional, we never accept that as an excuse.
Now, how do they use it when they use substances?
We just said I was high, I really didn't know what I was doing. If I hadn't been drinking, I wouldn't have done this. Or when they use it, they say, well, I really don't remember because I was drunk at the time. And once we get into it, we find out that they really do remember. People don't actually do something that devastating and not remember it.
Now, these, of course, represent deviant behavior. And I think that we could almost interchange the things that we're saying. Both have been in the closet for the longest. I think both have, for the most part, are associated with the person who is the abuser, having been abused himself or herself, and et cetera. And it seems that with that kind of pattern, that we ought to be able to come up with some kind of solutions to deal with this. What are some of the solutions to deal with child sexual violence and child sexual abuse, Ms. Butler?
Well, I guess one thing is making people aware and having people accept that it is a problem in this community and in this country, and stop saying that, well, it's not going to happen in my home, or it won't happen to my child. It can happen to anybody's child. And I guess that's the first thing, just be aware that it can happen, regardless of who you are and what you do and what you are, it can happen. And I think for so long we've kind of looked the other way and not always thinking about, well, because it's happening over there, you know, I don't really have to deal with it. It's everybody's problem and it's everybody's responsibility. It's the main thing that I think we need to get across. I wrote an article one time saying child sex abuse is everyone's responsibility. And I guess it's been about 4 or 5 years ago, but I'm remembering back to what I said. We all got to take some responsibility for this. The church has to take a big responsibility for this.
Why should the church be more concerned with this? I mean, why should it take such a great responsibility?
Because they come in contact with a lot of people and children and have activities. Saying, don't just think because someone, you know, comes to church that everything is intact and nothing is going on. Don't look the other way. That's just why I'm saying that. And not only the church, that's the school and anybody else, but because the church is such a big institution in our country, and it's so important, especially in African American lives. It's an important institution. I kind of point to the church a lot and say, please deal with this situation. Just, you know, sex period. People don't even want to talk about sex. We don't want it in schools now. Parents are not comfortable talking about it. Somebody has to talk about it. And people have to be, you know, saying this is an issue that needs to be dealt with.
Ms. Cannon.
I think there's a two-pronged approach to the solution, and that is to work with the institutions of our society, whether that be the church or the court or the medical institutions, where they are no longer turning their head, where they are looking this problem in the eye and saying, yes, this is a problem. What is our role in helping to end this societal problem? And then individuals taking responsibility to get the help that they need, and for victims to reach out as they feel comfortable doing so, to talk with the YWCA shelter, which has a 24-hour hotline, or to call the Peace Program, to talk with a trusted other, to break that silence, because there's so much shame around this issue of domestic violence that lots of times a woman will believe it's her fault. She's been made to believe that it's her fault, that she's caused the violence, and she hasn't. It's just what he has been telling her over and over again. So when she can begin to talk to trusted others and get, you know, the support that she needs, then this problem will begin to end.
As a matter of fact, I think, Ms. Cannon, you mentioned the fact of the shelters, various shelters for people who have been abused. Yeah. And let's talk about that, because I think quite recently there was an article in the newspaper indicating that some of these shelters are having some very, very difficult times in terms of support. Yes. And I want to talk about the kind of support that both of you receive in terms of financial support to do what you have to do. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the shelters and some of the ways that have been proposed to finance and yes, the shortcomings that you see there.
Well, first I'd like to say that both the YWCA Shelter for Women and Children and Peace are supported by the United Way, and we're very grateful to United Way. I think there's a misconception in the community that United Way, if they contribute to an organization, then they pick up the entire bill, and they clearly don't. It's just a fraction, it's a percentage of the entire budget, and so it's up to we who are in the agencies to raise those additional funds. Social services are all needing a lot of support, and financial raising money out in the community is a very competitive thing these days. Of course, there's foundation support, and there's local contributors and corporate sponsors, but all of those entities are really being pursued so much these days with the competition for dollars. It's very difficult.
What do you find in education in terms of the kind of support that you receive in grants and whatnot, Ms. Butler, for what you're doing?
Okay, for what we're doing, support is limited, and you know, there are some state contracts that we can do. There are a few grants, a few federal grants that we have that we can work with, but of course we are a nonprofit organization, and there's always a need for monies. You know, people's salary has to be paid. There are certain things that has to be done for children, that type of thing, and so it's a constant battle, you know, to find funds to where we need. There has been some organization that has come to our aid, you know, for different type of small projects, and we work with small children also. Like we start with age 2 in a therapeutic preschool environment. So there are some people who say, well, they're friends of children, so they'll give some special grants for special projects, and I think we make it that way.
And so you're trying to find as much